I served 14 years in the United States Army, 2 deployments to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq, and came home with a chest full of medals and a spine made of something harder than most men ever develop. I say that not to brag, but because you need to understand who I am before you understand what happened to me, and what I did about it. My name is Larry Caldwell. And my wife, Major Anna Caldwell, destroyed our marriage, blamed me for it, and then made the catastrophic mistake of underestimating exactly how much I knew about conducting a thorough operation. I met Anna 8 years ago at Fort Bragg. She was a JAG officer, sharp as a bayonet and twice as dangerous in an argument. I was a staff sergeant finishing up my 3rd deployment rotation. She had this way of walking into a room like she already owned every opinion in it, and God help me, I loved that about her. We dated for 2 years, got married in a ceremony with dress blues and white roses, and built what I believed was a fortress of a marriage. 2 incomes, no kids by choice, a nice house in Fayetteville, and a partnership I would have sworn on my service record was bulletproof. I sacrificed things for Anna. I passed on a promotion opportunity that would have sent me to Korea for 18 months because she had just been selected for a prestigious assignment at the Pentagon. I turned down a contractor position paying 3 times my Army salary because she asked me to wait until she finished her current posting. I cooked dinner most nights, kept the house running when her hours went insane, and drove 4 hours round trip every other weekend to support her when she was stationed temporarily in Virginia. I was, by any honest measure, a devoted husband. I also trusted her completely. That was my only real mistake. The day I found out began like a Tuesday should, boring, unremarkable, ordinary in every way that Tuesdays usually are. I had left my phone charger at home and driven back during my lunch break to grab it. Anna's car was in the driveway, which was strange because she had told me she had a full day of meetings at the base legal office. I remember thinking she must have come home sick, and I felt that small reflex of concern a husband feels, wondering if I should pick up soup on the way back. I let myself in quietly so I wouldn't startle her if she was sleeping. She was not sleeping. I heard her before I saw her. Laughter, low, easy, comfortable laughter coming from the direction of our bedroom, followed by a man's voice I didn't recognize saying something I couldn't make out. I stood in the hallway of my own house with my keys still in my hand and felt the floor tilt beneath me. My brain did what trained soldiers' brains do under unexpected contact. It went very, very still while it processed the information. I pushed open the bedroom door. Anna was sitting on our bed in her robe, her hair down, a glass of wine on the nightstand at 11:43 in the morning. Next to her, shirt half buttoned, was Captain Hollis, one of the officers assigned to her JAG unit. I had met him twice at unit functions. He had shaken my hand both times. Anna looked at me and her face did something I will never forget. It didn't show guilt first. It showed annoyance. Like I was the interruption. Like I was the problem. "Larry," she said, in a tone you would use on someone who had shown up uninvited to a party they weren't supposed to know about. Everything I had given her flashed through my mind in about 3 seconds. Korea. The contractor job. 8 years of dinners and drives and devotion. And here she sat, in our bedroom, at noon on a Tuesday, annoyed to see me. I looked at Hollis. He had the decency to look terrified. I looked back at Anna. "You need to start talking," I said. My voice was calm. That scared her more than yelling would have. Hollis grabbed his jacket and said something about giving us privacy. I stepped aside and let him leave because my issue was not with him. My issue was with the woman who had promised to be faithful to me in front of God, our families, and a military chaplain. "This isn't what it looks like," Anna said, and I almost laughed. Almost. "Anna, I'm standing in our bedroom looking directly at what it looks like," I said. "So let's skip that part." "How long?" She set her wine glass down. "Larry, our marriage has been struggling for a long time. You've been emotionally unavailable. You're always tired or distracted. I've been lonely." I stared at her. "How long? You never made me feel prioritized. How long, Anna?" She looked away. 7 months. 7 months. While I was driving to Virginia every other weekend to support her. While I was cooking dinners and maintaining the house and turning down jobs for a future. 7 months of Captain Hollis. "And you're going to sit there and tell me this is because I was emotionally unavailable," I said. I'm saying our marriage wasn't working, Larry. Did you try telling me that? Did you suggest counseling? Did you once say, Larry, I'm unhappy? She was quiet. Because I would have moved mountains, I said. You know I would have. It happened, and I think maybe we've grown apart and you didn't grow apart from me, Anna. You lied to me for 7 months while shaking hands with me and sleeping in our bed. That's not growing apart. That's a choice. She shifted. I could see her recalibrating, the way lawyers do when one argument isn't landing and they need to try another angle. You need to think about how your behavior contributed to this, Larry. Relationships are two-sided. That was the moment I understood what she was doing. She wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a JAG officer trying to establish a narrative, building her case before I could build mine, flipping the moral ledger so that by the time anyone outside that room heard about this, I would somehow be the one on trial. I had underestimated who I was dealing with. But she had made the same mistake about me. We're done, I said. I want you out of this house in 48 hours. Larry, you should think about this before you do anything rash. I looked at her one last time sitting in that bed with another man's cologne in our bedroom air. I am thinking about it, I said. Very clearly. Then I walked out, got in my truck, and sat in the driveway for about 4 minutes while I absorbed the complete destruction of the life I thought I had. I let myself feel it fully, because I knew that was the last time I could afford to. After those 4 minutes, I dried my face, started the engine, and shifted gears, literally and otherwise. I drove to the office, picked up my phone charger, and started making plans. I called my buddy Ray first. Ray Crawford had been my platoon sergeant years ago, was now retired, lived 20 minutes away, and was the kind of man who showed up with no questions and stayed as long as needed. I told him I needed a place to stay for a few nights and that Anna and I were done. He said, I'll have the guest room ready by 6. That was it. No drama, no interrogation, just the quiet loyalty of a man who understood that some situations didn't require commentary. Ray's wife Donna fed me dinner and didn't pry, and later that night, sitting on their back porch with a cold beer I barely tasted, the grief came properly. The real kind. Not tears, I'm not saying there were no tears, but what I mean is the full accounting of loss arrived, 8 years of mournings, of assuming someone was in your corner, of building something you believed in. That kind of loss is physical. It sits in your chest like shrapnel. I let it sit there. And then I started thinking. Anna was a JAG officer. She knew the legal landscape better than almost anyone. If she had decided to build a narrative that I was the neglectful, emotionally absent husband who had driven her to this, she would be constructing it methodically. She would be getting ahead of the story. And if she fed that narrative to the right people before I could establish the truth, I would be spending the next year defending myself against a fiction while she walked away clean. That was not going to happen. The next morning I called my sister Christine, who lived in Charlotte and who had always been honest with me in a way only siblings can be. I told her everything. Christine had met Anna dozens of times, liked her, but when I laid out the facts, the timeline, the scene I had walked in on, Anna's immediate pivot to blaming me, my sister went very quiet and then said, Larry, what do you need? I needed someone to help me document things. Christine was an HR professional with a methodical mind. She flew in 2 days later. Meanwhile, I went to see a divorce attorney named Patricia Webb, a woman with 30 years of family law experience and a reputation in Fayetteville for taking no prisoners. I laid everything out. She asked me exactly 3 questions, wrote several things on a legal pad, and then explained my situation to me with the clinical clarity of a surgeon explaining an operation. She also mentioned something important, because Anna was active duty military and the affair had occurred with a subordinate officer in her unit, this was not simply a marital matter. Adultery is still a violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Captain Hollis was junior to Anna in her own unit. That created additional dimensions to this situation that Anna, for all her legal training, might have been too personally involved to see clearly. I sat with that information carefully. I was not going to be reckless. I was not going to make moves out of pure anger. Every step would be measured, documented, and executed with the kind of precision I had spent 14 years developing. Christine arrived and we spent a weekend going through everything I could legally access. Joint bank accounts. I found that over the past 7 months, Anna had made a series of cash withdrawals that totaled a little over $9,000. Not enormous, but meaningful. Money from our joint account, being spent on something she clearly didn't want receipts for. Christine photographed every statement. We organized and dated everything. I also reached out quietly to 2 friends who knew people in Anna's unit, not to gossip, but to ask careful questions. What I began to piece together was that Hollis was not exactly a secret within the unit. A few people had noticed things. One person, a paralegal specialist named Dana who had always been friendly with both of us, reached out to me privately after she heard through mutual connections that Anna and I had separated. She told me, carefully, that she had witnessed some things that made her uncomfortable for months. She was willing to make a statement if it was ever needed. I thanked her and noted her willingness. I also discovered, through Anna's own social media activity, posts she had not thought to lock down completely, that she had been discussing our marriage with her colleagues and framing the separation as my emotional distance and unavailability. She had already begun the narrative. I saw a comment she had left on a mutual friend's post suggesting that she had finally made a hard but necessary decision for her well-being. No mention of why. Just the quiet positioning of herself as a woman who had bravely left a difficult marriage. I screenshot everything. Then I made my first move. I called Anna's mother, Roberta. Anna's parents lived in Ohio and I had always been genuinely close with them. Roberta was a decent woman who deserved the truth before the fiction reached her. I told her calmly and factually what had happened. I told her about walking in on Anna and Hollis. I told her about the 7 months. I told her about how Anna had responded not with remorse but with an attempt to blame me. Roberta was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Larry, I am so sorry." She was crying. She asked me what she could do. "I just wanted you to hear it from me," I told her. Before Anna has the chance to explain it away. 2 hours later, based on the conversation that apparently followed between Roberta and Anna, I received a furious text from my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, telling me I had no right to talk to her parents about our private affairs. I took a screenshot of the text, noted the date and time, and did not respond. Then I moved to the second strike. Through Patricia Webb, I filed for divorce on grounds that included marital misconduct. Patricia was thorough. The filing was airtight. Anna was served at her office on base. From what I heard through Ray, who still had contacts at Bragg, she did not take it gracefully. She called me that evening. I let it go to voicemail. In the message, her voice shifted between controlled and cracking, which told me the legal serving had rattled her more than she wanted to admit. She said we should discuss this like adults. She said I was making things worse. She said I needed to consider what I was doing to both of our careers and reputations. My career. My reputation. As if I had done something wrong. I called Patricia the next morning and told her about the voicemail. Patricia told me not to respond directly and to forward everything. Then I made my third move, and this one was the one that changed everything. I composed a formal written communication to Anna's commanding officer, Colonel Richard Stovall. I had met Stovall twice at official functions. He was an old-school officer, the kind who still believed that conduct unbecoming an officer was not just a regulation but a principle. My communication was not emotional, not accusatory in tone, but factual. I stated that I had discovered my wife, Major Anna Caldwell, was engaged in an ongoing affair with Captain Hollis, an officer under her supervision in her unit, and that I was providing this information pursuant to my understanding of UCMJ regulations regarding adultery and fraternization. I included a statement from Dana, who had followed through on her offer. I did not editorialize. I did not express bitterness. I presented facts in the format I had been trained for years to communicate in field reports: clear, sequential, sourced, and complete. Christine helped me proofread it 4 times before I sent it. Colonel Stovall's office acknowledged receipt within 24 hours. What followed over the next several weeks was methodical and, to me, deeply satisfying in the way that only genuine accountability can be. An investigation was opened. Anna and Hollis were both placed under administrative review. Hollis was transferred out of the unit immediately pending the investigation. Anna was placed on administrative duties, which effectively removed her from the leadership position she had worked years to build. I heard things through Patricia and through Ray's contacts, piecing together the picture. Anna had initially tried to characterize my report to Stovall as retaliatory and fabricated. Hollis, faced with the weight of an official investigation, did not support her version. Dana's statement was corroborated by a second witness who came forward once the investigation began. The $9,000 in cash withdrawals came up in the financial affidavits during the divorce proceedings and could not be satisfactorily explained. Anna sent me 3 more messages over this period. The first was angry and threatening. She said I had sabotaged her career out of spite and she would make sure everyone knew what kind of man I was. The second was different, quieter, more careful, clearly drafted with legal advice, acknowledging that the situation was complicated and suggesting mediation. The third was a voicemail at 2 in the morning, and I could tell from the sound of her voice that she had been crying. She said she hadn't meant for any of this, that she knew she had hurt me, that she was sorry. I listened to that one twice. I felt what anyone would feel, the complicated thing that happens when the person who broke you finally breaks themselves. I was not unmoved by it. But I was also not undone by it. I had seen exactly who she was when she looked at me with annoyance in our bedroom. That was the truth of it. The 2 in the morning voicemail was not. I didn't respond to any of them. Patricia and I moved through the divorce proceedings with the cash withdrawal evidence and the JAG investigation creating significant leverage in the settlement negotiations. The house had been purchased primarily with my savings and a VA loan in my name. It came to me. The joint accounts were divided, but Anna's inability to account for the $9,000 was noted by the court. I was not vindictive in what I asked for. Patricia advised me that being measured and factual would serve me better than appearing to be on a scorched earth campaign, and she was right. I asked for what was fair. I received it. I also learned, through Patricia, that the UCMJ investigation resulted in formal reprimands for both Anna and Hollis. Hollis received additional consequences due to the fraternization component. Anna's promotion file, which had been in review for lieutenant colonel, was effectively placed on indefinite hold. The promotion board convened and her packet was passed over. For a career officer, being passed over for promotion is not a minor setback. It alters the entire trajectory. She had been on a path to lieutenant colonel and possibly higher. That path was now, at minimum, severely complicated. I would be lying if I said I felt nothing about that. I felt something, not quite pleasure, not quite satisfaction, but a deep and functional sense of justice having operated correctly. Not because I wanted Anna ruined. I genuinely didn't. But because she had tried to rewrite the truth, to cast herself as the victim of my emotional unavailability while erasing her own 7 months of deliberate deception, and she had tried to do it to a man she knew and should have feared. The system, for once, had not let her do it. 6 months after signing the divorce papers, I took the contractor position I had turned down 2 years earlier for Anna's sake. The company, a defense consulting firm, had come back to me when they heard I was available. The salary was, as I had been told, roughly 3 times what I had earned in uniform. I signed the paperwork on a Tuesday, which felt appropriate. I moved to Virginia, ironically enough, not because of Anna's Pentagon connection, which was now considerably dimmed, but because the firm was headquartered there and it suited me. I rented an apartment with a view I liked, got back into the weight room, and reconnected with who I was before 8 years of compromise had made me into someone who drove 4 hours on weekends to prop up a life that was built, I now understood, somewhat unevenly. I ran into Ray and Donna in the early months several times when I came back through Fayetteville. They watched me carefully the way good people watch someone healing, looking for signs, adjusting their concern as needed. By late autumn of that year, Ray told me over a beer that I looked like myself again. I understood what he meant. There is a version of me that goes quiet and inward when I'm absorbing a long defeat. I had been in that mode without realizing it for probably the last 2 years of the marriage. The version of me Ray was looking at now had a different posture. Christine came to visit me in Virginia that spring and we cooked dinner together and walked along the waterfront and talked the way siblings do after a family storm passes, processing things, filing them away. She told me she was proud of how I had handled everything. I told her I'd had a good teacher, meaning our father, who had raised us both to believe that integrity was the hill you defended no matter the cost. I also began, slowly, to trust again, not immediately, not recklessly, but I made the choice not to let Anna's betrayal make me permanently unreachable. There was a woman I met through work, a project manager named Claire, who was patient and perceptive and funny in a quiet way I liked. We went slowly. She knew some of my history, not all of it, and never pushed for what I wasn't ready to give. That kind of patience is a particular form of kindness, and I didn't take it for granted. By the time nearly a year had passed from the Tuesday I had walked into my own bedroom and found my marriage in ruins, I had a new city, a new job, a new life that was genuinely and demonstrably better in almost every measurable way than the one I had left behind. Then I ran into Anna. It was at a government conference in Washington, the kind of interagency event where military and civilian defense personnel mingle in conference rooms and hotel lobbies. I almost didn't recognize her at first, and that was the detail that struck me most, not because she looked terrible, but because she looked diminished in a way that had nothing to do with physical appearance. She was standing near the registration table, and something about her posture had changed. The officer's bearing she had always worn like armor was still there technically, but the confidence underneath it was gone. She looked like someone wearing a costume of themselves. She saw me first. I watched her face run through about 4 expressions in 2 seconds: shock, calculation, something that might have been fear, and then the desperate composure of someone trying to look like they're not desperate. I was with 2 colleagues and I wrapped up the conversation I was in naturally, without making a scene of noticing her, and then I walked over alone. I owed myself that conversation. I had earned the right to have it on my own terms. "Larry," she said. "Anna," I said. I looked at her carefully, the way you look at something you once believed in. "You look tired." She gave a small, unsteady laugh. "It's been a hard year." "I imagine," I said. She glanced at my suit, at the conference badge with the firm's name on it, at my general presence in a room she hadn't expected me to be succeeding in. You seem like you're doing well." "I am," I said simply. "Really well." She was quiet for a moment. In the gap I could see what she wanted to say and was trying to organize into something that wouldn't come out wrong. Finally she said, "I know I handled everything badly, Larry. I know that's an understatement. But I want you to know that I genuinely regret how, Anna," I said, not unkindly but with absolute clarity. "I'm not available for that conversation." She blinked. "We're finished with that," I said. "It's done, it's resolved, and I've moved well past it. I hope you're okay." "I mean that. But I don't have anything left to process with you." She looked at me for a long moment and I saw it, the moment she understood that I was not performing calm, not holding back emotion for later, not secretly still in pain and waiting for her apology to heal me. I had genuinely moved on, and that reality was more devastating to her than any anger would have been. Anger would have meant I still cared enough to be angry. What she was looking at was something else entirely, a man who had accounted for what happened, taken what was his, and walked into a better life. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Truly." "I know," I said. And I did believe she meant it. Loss tends to clarify things. Take care of yourself. I turned and walked back to my colleagues without looking back once. Not as a performance. I simply had no reason to look back. There was nothing behind me I needed. What I've come to understand, in the time since, is something my father used to say when I was young and nursing some boyhood injustice. He would listen to the whole story and then say, "Larry, the best answer to a lie is a life." He meant that you could spend your energy trying to correct every false thing said about you, running around the perimeter of the story someone else was telling, or you could build something so plainly and obviously real that the lie couldn't stand up next to it. Anna had tried to tell a story about me. Emotionally distant. Unavailable. A husband who drove her to it. She had constructed that story carefully, in advance, with the legal instincts of a JAG officer who knew how to shape a narrative. But I hadn't tried to fight the story. I had simply refused to be the character in it. I had gathered facts, pursued legitimate accountability through proper channels, protected my financial interests, and then departed. And then I had built a life. I got a promotion at the firm 9 months in. Claire and I made things official sometime after that, quiet and without fanfare, which was how both of us preferred it. I took 2 vacations that year, actual vacations, not the working trips Anna and I had always taken where her phone never stopped ringing and everything centered on her career and her needs. I hiked part of the Appalachian Trail with Ray and 2 other old Army friends, and we were out of cell range for 4 days and it was the most at peace I had felt in years. I heard about Anna the way you hear about someone from a former life, through the distant static of mutual connections and second-hand updates. She had not received her promotion as of the last I heard. Hollis had been assigned to a different installation, and their relationship, whatever it had been, had not survived the investigation. She was, by all accounts, still in the army, but on a different kind of track than the one she had been on, quieter, more marginal, the trajectory of a career that had suffered a significant and visible setback. I did not feel triumphant when I heard these things. I felt what I can only describe as a settled sense of accuracy, the way things feel when the accounting is correct and the numbers add up the way they should. She had made choices. Those choices had consequences. I had made choices too, and mine had consequences as well: a consulting career, a life in a city I was growing to love, a relationship built on honesty, a self I recognized in the mirror. 14 years in the army taught me many things. It taught me how to move under fire. It taught me how to gather intelligence and act on it. It taught me how to complete an objective and then debrief, extract what was useful from the experience, and move to the next mission without dragging the last one behind me like a weight. The best commanders I ever served under had one quality in common: they never confused the map for the territory. Anna had built a map, a story about who I was and what our marriage had been, and she had confused it for the real thing. She had trusted her own narrative more than she trusted the truth. I am the territory. I am what I actually am, what I actually did, what I actually built. No one's story about me can change